My daughter-in-law opened my safe while I was hospitalized and sold my late wife's jewelry, telling my son, "It's just dusty gold." When I returned home, she said, "You should have taken that to the grave." I pretended not to know, but one night she got a call from a private investigator that left her shaking when she heard. I stood in the doorway of my own house feeling like a stranger. The air smelled wrong, sterile and artificial, like someone had tried to erase every trace of the life I had lived here for 40 years. My coat hung heavy on my shoulders, still damp from the February rain outside. The hospital discharge papers crinkled in my pocket as I shifted my weight, my legs still unsteady after 3 weeks flat on my back recovering from pneumonia. The hallway looked the same but felt different, like walking through a photograph of a place you used to know. I could hear voices in the kitchen, low and comfortable, the sound of people who thought they were alone. My hand trembled slightly as I reached for the study door. The old oak painting that Alina had bought at that estate sale in Vermont hung just slightly crooked on the wall. Behind it, the safe door stood open maybe half an inch. My heart went cold. I have always been the kind of man who notices small details, the things other people overlook. Alina used to say I counted raindrops and catalogued shadows. She meant it as a compliment, I think, though sometimes my obsessive need to control every little thing drove her crazy. I had checked that safe 3 times before the ambulance took me away, spinning the dial exactly right each time, listening for the click. Now it hung open like a broken jaw. My hands shook as I pulled the painting fully aside. The safe door swung open with a soft metallic whine. Empty. The black velvet interior stared back at me like a missing tooth. Alina's wedding necklace gone. The anniversary bracelet with the tiny diamonds she had worn every single day for 30 years gone. The emerald ring she clutched in the delivery room when Daniel was born, her knuckles white with pain and joy gone. I stood there for what felt like hours but was probably only seconds, staring into that empty space where my wife's memory had lived. My chest felt tight, not from the pneumonia but from something darker and heavier. I closed the safe carefully, spun the dial, straightened the painting. Then I walked to the kitchen where my son Daniel sat scrolling through his phone, and Lillian leaned against the counter eating grapes from a bowl, looking bored and beautiful and completely unconcerned. "You should have taken that to the grave," Lillian said, noticing me in the doorway. She popped another grape in her mouth and shrugged. "Dad," Daniel looked up with a vague smile. "You're back, how are you feeling?" I could have screamed. I could have grabbed her by her perfect shoulders and shaken her until that smug expression cracked. But I have always been too controlled for my own good, too afraid of what might happen if I ever truly let loose. Alina used to beg me to just yell sometimes, to stop swallowing everything down until it poisoned me from the inside. I learned control from my father, who learned it from his father, a long line of men who smiled through gritted teeth and died of heart attacks at 60. "What should I have taken to the grave?" I asked, my voice coming out steady and mild. Lillian waved her hand dismissively, her wedding ring catching the light. "Just old things, memories, they clutter the living, you know. Daniel and I were talking about it while you were in the hospital. You can't take it with you, Arthur." She said my name like she was talking to a child. "Right, Daniel." My son looked uncomfortable, his eyes flicking between his wife and me. "We just thought, with you being sick and everything, maybe it was time to simplify, let go of some stuff." I nodded slowly, feeling something cold and patient settling into my bones. "I see." That night, I heard them in the hallway outside my bedroom. Their voices carried through the old house with its thin walls and creaking floors. "It was just dusty gold," Lillian said with a laugh. "Your dad doesn't even wear it. What was he going to do, take it out and cry over it every night?" Daniel made a sound that might have been agreement or discomfort, I could not tell which. "I know, but still, my mom's jewelry, it feels weird." "Oh please, she's been dead for 5 years. At some point you have to move on. Besides, do you know what that emerald ring was worth?" I looked it up. "We could have been sitting on a fortune while your dad hoarded it in that ridiculous safe." "How much did you get for it?" Daniel asked. There was a pause. "Enough, don't worry about it." "Lillian, how much?" I said, "Don't worry about it. I'm handling our finances like I always do. You just focus on your work and let me deal with the real world." Their footsteps faded down the hallway. I lay in the dark room that Alina and I had shared for 33 years, staring at the ceiling and thinking. My mind works in circles when I am angry, endless loops of calculation and planning, analyzing every angle until I have considered every possible outcome. It is both my greatest strength and my worst flaw, this inability to just act on instinct. Alina used to grab my face and make me look at her when I got like this. "Stop thinking and just feel something," she would say. But I never learned how. I opened my laptop in the dim light and searched for private investigators in the area. By morning I had called 3 and hired one, a man named Victor Hale who spoke in careful, measured sentences and charged $200 an hour. "I need documentation," I told him on the phone. "Everything, where it went, who bought it, how much she got." "Can you do that, Mr. Whitmore?" Victor said, his voice gravelly and tired. "I can find out what she had for breakfast on Tuesday if you want me to. Jewelry leaves a trail, especially high-value pieces. Give me 2 weeks." I gave him 3. During that time I played my role perfectly. I shuffled around the house in my slippers, asked Lillian to help me with the groceries because the stairs made me dizzy, thanked her for keeping everything so clean and organized while I was sick. She preened under the attention, soaking up my gratitude like it was her due. Daniel relaxed, relieved that I had not made a scene about whatever had happened while I was gone. And every night I sat in my study with the door closed, reading the reports Victor emailed me. The jewelry had been sold through an online luxury auction house called Heritage Collectibles. Lillian had photographed each piece on the kitchen table, probably while I was drugged and unconscious in my hospital bed, and uploaded them with detailed descriptions. Vintage Art Deco diamond necklace, platinum setting, excellent condition. Estate emerald ring, 3.2 carats, certified natural Colombian emerald, 18K gold band. The emerald ring alone had sold for $48,000. The necklace went for $32,000. The bracelet, the one Alina never took off until they removed it from her wrist at the funeral home, sold for $18,000. $98,000 total. And Lillian had deposited every penny into a private account at a bank across town, an account Daniel's name did not appear on anywhere. I read through the email exchanges between Lillian and the auction house. She had been pushy, demanding, insisting on premium placement for her listings, and complaining when the bidding did not start high enough. These are irreplaceable family heirlooms, she had written without a trace of irony. They deserve to be appreciated by serious collectors. I wanted to put my fist through the computer screen. Instead, I made notes in my careful handwriting, documenting every detail. Victor called me on a Tuesday afternoon. "Mr. Whitmore, I need to tell you something." His voice sounded different, cautious. "What is it?" "Your son's name appears on some of the paperwork, not the bank account, but the initial auction listing. He's listed as a co-owner of the items. Did you know that?" The room tilted slightly. I gripped the edge of my desk. "Say that again." "Daniel Whitmore is listed as having joint ownership of the jewelry items. His signature is on the authentication documents. He signed off on the sale." I closed my eyes and saw my son, 8 years old, sitting on Alina's lap while she showed him the emerald ring and told him the story of the day he was born. "This ring is magic," she had said, her voice full of warmth and certainty. "I held it so tight when you came into the world, and it gave me strength. Someday you'll understand what that means." He had touched it with careful fingers, his face full of wonder. "Can I have it when I grow up?" Alina had kissed his forehead. "Someday, baby. When you find someone as special as you are, you can give them something just as beautiful." But that is not what happened. What happened was my son signed papers authenticating his dead mother's jewelry so his wife could sell it and hide the money. "Mr. Whitmore, are you still there?" "I'm here," I said, my voice sounding like it belonged to someone else. "Get me everything, every document, every email, every transaction. I want proof of all of it." "Ready, done. I'm sending the full report now. There's one more thing." "What?" "The jewelry was sold to private collectors, but I was able to track down who bought what. The emerald ring went to a collector in Boston. He's reputable, keeps detailed records. If you wanted to try to buy it back, I could facilitate that." "Do it," I said immediately. "All of it, buy it all back if you can. That's going to cost significantly more than what she sold it for. These buyers know what they have now." "I don't care, get it back." My hands were shaking again, but not from weakness this time. Over the next 3 weeks, Victor worked his contacts and I liquidated assets quietly. I sold stock, cashed in bonds, emptied a savings account Alina and I had kept for emergencies. The emergency was now. The jewelry came back piece by piece, shipped in discreet boxes with insurance paperwork and certificates of authenticity. Each time I opened one, I felt like I was pulling Alina back from the grave an inch at a time. The emerald ring cost me $72,000 to recover. The necklace was $60,000. The bracelet, $45,000. $177,000 total, almost twice what Lillian had gotten for them. I held each piece and felt the weight of them, not just the gold and stones, but everything they represented. I was bankrupting myself to undo what my daughter-in-law, and possibly my son, had done. Some people might call that foolish. Alina would have called it stubborn. I called it necessary. While the jewelry slowly returned to me, I worked with a lawyer named Patricia Hendricks who specialized in estate law and family disputes. She was sharp and practical, with grey hair cut short and reading glasses on a chain around her neck. "Mr. Whitmore," she said during our first meeting in her office downtown, "what exactly do you want to accomplish here?" "Justice," I said. She smiled slightly. "Justice is expensive and slow. Be more specific." "I want her to pay for what she did. I want everyone to know what she is, and I want my son to understand what he chose." Patricia folded her hands on her desk. "Okay, here's what we can do. The jewelry was not legally hers to sell, even if your son gave permission. You never transferred ownership, never gave written consent. That makes this theft, potentially felony theft given the value. We can press charges criminally, or we can pursue a civil suit for the return of the property and damages. Or both." "Both," I said immediately. "I want everything. That's going to get ugly. Your son will likely be implicated. His signature is on those documents. Are you prepared for that?" I thought about Daniel avoiding my eyes at breakfast, the way he had stopped visiting me at the hospital after the first few days, how quickly he had accepted Lillian's version of events. Yes, I said, I'm prepared. Patricia nodded. Then let's begin. The plan came together slowly over the next month. Patricia filed paperwork with the police, documenting the theft. She secured a court order to freeze Lillian's private bank account pending investigation. She prepared a civil lawsuit demanding the return of $98,000 plus interest and damages. And she arranged for everything to happen at once, a coordinated strike that would leave Lillian no time to hide or prepare. I helped by gathering every piece of evidence, every receipt, every email. My hands cramped from typing up timelines and statements. I barely slept, my mind racing through scenarios and possibilities, imagining Lillian's face when she realized what was coming. This obsessive tendency to plan every detail had cost me so much over the years. I had planned every vacation down to the minute until Alina stopped wanting to travel with me. I had organized Daniel's childhood so thoroughly that he grew up never learning to make his own decisions. I had insisted on being in control of everything until control was all I had left. But now, for once, my worst trait was useful. The trap was set. All I needed was the right moment to spring it. That moment came on a Friday night in late April. I told Daniel and Lillian I wanted to have dinner together, just the three of us, to thank them for taking care of me during my illness. Lillian seemed suspicious, but Daniel encouraged her, probably relieved that I seemed to be moving past whatever had bothered me. They arrived at 6, Lillian carrying a bottle of wine she had definitely not paid for, Daniel looking tired in his work clothes. We sat at the dining room table where Alina and I had hosted 1,000 meals, where we had celebrated birthdays and holidays and ordinary Tuesdays. I had cooked pot roast, Alina's recipe, and the smell filled the house with memories. This is nice, Dad, Daniel said, trying too hard to sound casual. We should do this more often. We should, I agreed, serving food onto their plates. I've been thinking a lot lately about family, about what we owe each other. Lillian cut into her meat without looking up. That's sweet, Arthur, very philosophical. Lillian, I said quietly, where is my wife's jewelry? The room went silent. Daniel's fork stopped halfway to his mouth. Lillian's eyes snapped up to meet mine, and I saw the calculation there, the quick assessment of how to play this. What jewelry? She asked. Don't, I said, my voice harder now. Don't insult me by pretending you don't know what I'm talking about. Arthur, I don't know what you think happened, but the safe in my study was opened while I was in the hospital. 3 pieces of jewelry were removed. Alina's wedding necklace, her anniversary bracelet, and the emerald ring from the day Daniel was born. You sold them through Heritage Collectibles for $98,000 and deposited the money in a private account at First National Bank. Her face went pale. Daniel set down his fork slowly. Dad, what are you talking about? I pulled out my phone and set it on the table. Would you like to hear the recorded phone conversation between Lillian and the auction house? I have it right here. Or maybe you'd prefer to see the bank statements showing the deposits. I have those too. Lillian stood up fast, her chair scraping against the floor. You had no right to investigate me. That's a violation of privacy. That's what exactly? I stood too and felt something wild and dangerous rising in my chest, that thing I had spent 72 years keeping locked down. What you did is called theft, it's called elder abuse, it's called betrayal of the worst kind. Those things were just sitting there collecting dust. Lillian shouted, her composure finally cracking. You weren't using them, you were never going to use them, they were wasted on you. They were my wife's memory, they were Daniel's inheritance, they were not yours to take. My voice boomed through the house, louder than I had spoken in years. Daniel flinched. Dad, please, let's just calm down, Daniel tried, but his voice was weak. I rounded on him. Did you help her do this? He could not meet my eyes. She said we needed the money. She said you'd never notice, that you didn't even look at that stuff anymore. You signed the papers, I said, and my voice cracked. Your mother's jewelry, the ring she held when you were born. You authenticated it so your wife could sell it, and you never said a word to me. I didn't think it would matter this much, Daniel said weakly. Didn't think it would matter. I felt tears on my face and did not care. Your mother wore that bracelet every single day, every day for 30 years. She was wearing it when she died. The funeral home had to cut it off her wrist because I couldn't bear to take it off while she was still warm. And you didn't think it would matter. Lillian grabbed her purse. I'm not listening to this. You're being dramatic and manipulative. Daniel, we're leaving. No, I said quietly, you're not. I pulled out my phone again and made a call. Patricia, they're here, you can send him in now. Who's Patricia? Lillian demanded. Send who in? The doorbell rang. I walked past them and opened it. A police officer stood there with Patricia beside him, both looking serious and official. Mr. Whitmore, the officer said. We have a warrant for questioning regarding stolen property. Is Lillian Whitmore here? Lillian's face went from pale to white to a sick grey color. You called the police on your own family. You're not family, I said, and meant it. Family doesn't steal from each other. Family doesn't sell memories for money. You're a thief who happens to be married to my son. The next hour was chaos. The officer explained that charges had been filed, that Lillian needed to come down to the station to answer questions about the sale of property that did not belong to her. Daniel tried to argue, his voice getting higher and more desperate, but Patricia shut him down with legal terms and documented evidence. Lillian cried, which surprised me because I did not think she was capable of genuine emotion, but they might have been tears of anger rather than remorse. "This is insane," she kept saying. "You're ruining your son's life over some old jewelry. Is that what you want, to destroy your own family? You destroyed this family," I said, my voice steady, now cold. "The moment you decided my wife's memory had a price tag, the moment you convinced my son to betray everything she taught him. This is not about jewelry, Lillian. This is about who you are." "Daniel, say something," she shouted at my son. "Tell him he's being crazy." But Daniel just stood there, looking smaller than I had ever seen him, and said nothing. The officer took Lillian down to the station. Patricia stayed behind to talk to Daniel about his role in the theft, explaining that while he could potentially face charges as an accessory, his cooperation could make things easier. I sat at the dining table listening to them negotiate my son's conscience and felt nothing but exhaustion. When they finally left and I was alone, I went to the study and opened the safe. Inside were the 3 pieces of jewelry, returned from the collectors who had bought them, back where they belonged. I took out the emerald ring and held it up to the light. The stone caught the lamplight and glowed green like summer leaves, like Alina's eyes when she laughed. I thought about the $77,000 extra it had cost me to get these back, money that was supposed to be for my retirement, for Daniel's inheritance, for the future. Gone now. Spent. I thought about how my need to control everything, to plan and document and keep everything in its proper place, had actually worked this time. How my obsessive attention to detail and my inability to let things go had caught Lillian in her lie. Maybe my flaws were not always weaknesses. Maybe sometimes they were exactly what the situation required. But I also thought about Daniel's face when he realized I had been investigating them for weeks, the betrayal in his eyes that I had not trusted him enough to talk to him first. About how my pride had kept me from having a single honest conversation with my son before I went to lawyers and police. About how I had chosen revenge over reconciliation, because that felt cleaner, more controlled, more certain than the messy work of forgiveness. Over the following weeks, the consequences rippled outward like stones thrown in still water. Lillian was charged with felony theft and faced up to 5 years in prison depending on the plea deal her lawyer could arrange. The private bank account was emptied by court order and the money returned to me, minus legal fees. Daniel moved out of the house he shared with Lillian and into an apartment downtown, shell-shocked and distant. He called me once. "Dad, did you have to go this far? Did you have to destroy everything?" I was quiet for a long time. "She destroyed it first, Daniel. I just made sure everyone could see what she did. But I'm your son. You went after her knowing it would hurt me too. You signed those papers," I said. "You chose her over your mother's memory. What did you think would happen?" He hung up. I stared at the phone and felt something break inside my chest that I knew would never fully heal. The divorce papers were filed within a month. Lillian tried to claim entitlement to Daniel's assets in the divorce, but the criminal charges made that complicated. She ended up with almost nothing, her reputation destroyed, her social circle gone. I heard through mutual acquaintances that she moved back to her hometown in Ohio, living with her parents while she waited for her trial date. Daniel eventually pleaded guilty to misdemeanor for his role in authenticating the stolen property and received probation and a fine. His name was in the newspaper. His law firm asked him to resign. His friends stopped calling. One evening about 6 months after everything exploded, I was sitting in my study when someone knocked on the door. I opened it to find Daniel standing there in the rain, soaked through, looking like he had not slept in days. "Can I come in?" he asked. I stepped aside and let him in. We sat in the living room where he had grown up, where Alina had read him bedtime stories and bandaged his skinned knees and taught him how to be kind. The silence stretched between us like years. "I'm sorry," he finally said. "I know that doesn't fix anything, but I need you to know I'm sorry. I should have protected Mom's jewelry. I should have stood up to Lillian. I should have been honest with you." I nodded slowly. "Yes, you should have. I don't know how to make this right." "I don't either," I admitted. "I got the jewelry back, Daniel. I got justice, but I lost you in the process. Was that the right choice? I honestly don't know anymore." He looked at me with Alina's eyes. "Why didn't you just talk to me first, before the lawyers and police? Why didn't you give me a chance to fix it?" "Because I was hurt," I said, and the honesty of it cut. "Because I was angry and I wanted her to pay. Because planning revenge felt better than admitting my son had betrayed me. Because I've spent my whole life trying to control everything, and this was something I could control when everything else felt broken." We sat with that truth between us. "The emerald ring," Daniel said quietly. "Can I see it?" I went to the study and brought back the ring in its velvet box. He took it with shaking hands. "I remember when Mom showed this to me. I was so little, but I remember thinking it was the most beautiful thing in the world. She said it gave her strength." "It did," I said. "She was in labor for 18 hours with you. She never let go of that ring." "I threw that away," Daniel said, his voice breaking. I let Lillian sell the thing that brought me into the world. What kind of person does that make me? The kind who made a terrible mistake, I said. The kind who has to figure out how to live with that. We both do. He set the ring down carefully on the coffee table. I don't expect you to forgive me. Good, I said, because I don't know if I can, not yet, maybe not ever, but you're still my son. That doesn't change even when everything else does. We talked until late into the night, picking through the wreckage of what had happened, trying to understand how we had both arrived at this place. There were no easy answers, no moment of perfect reconciliation, just two broken people trying to figure out how to be family again. The trial happened in October. Lillian pleaded guilty to reduced charges in exchange for 18 months in prison and restitution. I attended every day of the proceedings, sitting in the back of the courtroom while lawyers discussed my wife's jewelry in clinical terms, as exhibits and evidence rather than memories. When it was finally over and Lillian was led away in handcuffs, I felt no satisfaction, just tired. Daniel did not attend the trial. He was already in therapy, trying to untangle his choices and rebuild his life. He had gotten a new job at a different firm, started slowly reconnecting with old friends, and was living alone for the first time in his adult life. We had dinner together every few weeks, awkward and careful, like strangers learning each other's names. I still kept Alina's jewelry in the safe, checking on it more often than was probably healthy. Sometimes I took out the emerald ring and held it, remembering the weight of it in her hand, the way it caught the light in the delivery room while she pushed our son into the world. I had spent $177,000 to get these pieces back. I had destroyed my relationship with my son and devastated his marriage and career. I had gotten my revenge completely and thoroughly, and I was not sure if any of it had been worth it. But late at night, when the house was quiet and I sat alone with memories, I thought about what Patricia had asked me in the beginning. What did I want to accomplish? I had wanted justice. I had wanted Lillian to pay. I had wanted the world to see what she had done, and I got all of that, every bit of it. The price was just higher than I expected. One evening, about a year after everything started, I was in the kitchen making coffee when I found something wedged behind the coffee maker. An envelope, old and yellowed, in Alina's handwriting. My name written on the front. Inside was a letter dated about a month before she died. My darling Arthur, it read. If you're finding this, it means I'm gone and you're still doing that thing where you organize the kitchen at random times because you can't sleep. Some things never change. I want you to know something important. The jewelry I wore, the rings and necklaces and bracelets you gave me over the years, they were beautiful. I treasured them. But they were never the important part. You were, the life we built was, the son we raised was. Things are just things, my love. They're symbols of what mattered, but they're not what actually mattered. If something ever happens to those pieces, don't let it destroy you. Don't let it destroy Daniel. Promise me you'll remember that the real treasure was never in any safe or vault. It was in how we loved each other. That's what matters. That's what lasts. I love you. Even after I'm gone, especially after I'm gone, I love you. Don't forget to live. Alina. I stood in the kitchen holding that letter while my coffee went cold and felt something crack open inside my chest. All the planning, all the revenge, all the careful documentation and strategic legal moves. I had been so focused on punishing the theft that I had forgotten what Alina was trying to tell me. The jewelry was never the point. I had bankrupted myself recovering symbols of love while abandoning the actual love itself. I had chosen things over my son, control over connection. Revenge over reconciliation. And Alina, even from beyond death, was trying to tell me I had gotten it all wrong. I called Daniel. He answered on the third ring, his voice cautious. Dad, everything okay? I found a letter from your mother, I said. I think you should read it. He came over that night. We sat at the kitchen table where we had eaten 1,000 meals together, where I had served pot roast the night I destroyed his life, and I watched him read his mother's words. When he finished, tears were running down his face. She knew, he said. She knew what you'd do if anything happened to her stuff. She knew me better than I knew myself, I admitted. Daniel, I made a mistake, a huge one. I was so angry about what Lillian did, so focused on making her pay, that I forgot what actually mattered. Your mother never would have wanted me to lose you over jewelry she probably would have given to Lillian herself if it made you happy. Know about that, Daniel said with a weak laugh. Mom had pretty good judgment about people. She probably would have seen through Lillian from the start. Fair point, I said, but she would have chosen you every time, and I should have too. You did choose me, Daniel said. In a weird way, you were trying to protect Mom's memory and my inheritance. You just went about it in the most Arthur Whitmore way possible. Meticulous, thorough, and completely devastating to everyone involved. I smiled despite myself. It's a gift. It's something, Daniel agreed. We sat in silence for a while, then Daniel said, I need to tell you something. I've been seeing someone, a therapist, but also a person. She's a teacher. Her name is Sarah. She's kind. She doesn't care about money or status. She brings her students homemade cookies. She's nothing like Lillian. I'd like to meet her, I said. When you're ready. I'd like that too. He paused. Dad, I don't know if we can ever get back what we had before all of this. No, I agreed. We can't. That's gone. But maybe we can build something new, something honest. I'd like to try, Daniel said, and so we did. It was slow, painful work. There were setbacks and arguments and moments when we both wanted to give up. But we kept showing up, kept trying, kept choosing each other over our pride and hurt. I met Sarah in December. She was exactly as Daniel described, warm and genuine and completely unimpressed by my attempts to control the conversation. She called me out when I got too rigid, laughed at my jokes, and told me stories about her fourth-grade students that made me smile. She was good for Daniel in ways I could not articulate but recognized immediately. I started spending less time in my study obsessing over documentation and more time trying to learn who my son had become. We went to baseball games, something we used to do when he was young. We argued about politics and laughed about old memories and slowly, carefully, rebuilt something resembling trust. The jewelry stayed in the safe. I looked at it sometimes, but less often. It was still precious, still meaningful, but it was no longer the center of my universe. One evening about 2 years after everything fell apart, Daniel and Sarah came over for dinner. She was pregnant, just starting to show. They were excited and terrified in equal measure. "We wanted to ask you something," Daniel said as we ate dessert. "We'd like to name the baby Alina if it's a girl, after Mom, if that's okay with you." I had to set down my fork and take a breath. She would have loved that. Yes, of course, yes. "We were thinking," Sarah added, "if it's a girl, maybe someday she could have that emerald ring. The one from the day Daniel was born, only if you're comfortable with that. We understand if it's too important to you." I looked at Daniel, saw Alina in his eyes in his hesitant smile, thought about all the money I had spent, all the damage I had done, all in the name of protecting a stone and some metal. "Yes," I said, "that's exactly what it should be for. That's what your mother would have wanted." That night after they left, I went to the safe and took out the ring, held it up to the light one last time as my possession. Soon it would belong to a new Alina, a granddaughter I had not yet met. The ring would continue its journey, passing through generations, accumulating new memories and new meanings. That was how it was supposed to work. I thought about everything that had happened, about how my obsessive need for control and documentation had both saved and nearly destroyed me, about how getting revenge had felt righteous in the moment but empty in the aftermath, about how I had let things matter more than people, until Alina reached back from death to remind me what actually mattered. About how Daniel and I had both made terrible choices, how we had both been flawed and foolish and human, and how we were both trying to do better now. The consequences of that night when I confronted Lillian still rippled through all our lives. She was still in prison, would be for another few months. Her family had disowned her. She had written Daniel a letter apologizing, but he had not opened it yet. Maybe he would someday, maybe he would not. That was his choice to make. Daniel's career had recovered slowly, but would never be what it was. Some doors stayed closed. Some bridges stayed burned. He seemed okay with that now, more focused on the life he was building than the one he had lost. And me, I was lighter somehow, less rigid. I still organized things and made plans and documented everything, because that is who I am and probably always will be. But I tried to remember Alina's letter, tried to hold things loosely enough that I could still feel the warmth of them without crushing them in my grip. Sometimes late at night, I still wondered if I had made the right choices, if there had been a better way to handle everything, if I should have tried forgiveness first before revenge. But there was no going back, no way to unring the bell. There was only forward, only trying to build something better with the pieces that remained. The baby was born in June, a girl with dark hair and her grandmother's eyes. They named her Alina Ruth Whitmore. When I held her for the first time, I cried in a way I had not cried since Alina's funeral. This was what had mattered all along. Not the jewelry, not the money, not being right or getting revenge. Just this: love and family and the messy, complicated work of staying connected even when it is hard. I visited them often, watching my granddaughter grow, teaching her to garden the way I had taught Daniel decades ago. Sarah and Daniel built a good life together, careful and honest, learning from their past mistakes. They never had much money, but they seemed happy. One afternoon when Alina was almost 3, she was playing in my backyard when she found something shiny in the garden. Old coin or button, nothing valuable, but she brought it to me like it was treasure. "Look, Grandpa, gold," she said, her eyes wide with wonder. I held the dirty piece of metal and thought about real gold, about emerald rings and diamond necklaces, about everything I had lost and gained and learned. "You know what?" I said, handing it back to her. "You're absolutely right. That's the most valuable gold I've ever seen. Because you found it and it made you happy. That's what makes things valuable. Not what they cost, but what they mean." She beamed at me and ran off to find more treasure. I watched her go, this little girl carrying her grandmother's name and spirit, and felt something settle into place. Revenge had seemed so important once. Being right, proving a point, protecting things. But in the end, none of that had mattered nearly as much as this moment, watching my granddaughter play in the garden while my son and his wife laughed on the porch, building a future on the ruins of the past. I had gotten everything I thought I wanted when I destroyed Lillian's life and got Alina's jewelry back, and I had lost almost everything that actually mattered. But somehow, impossibly, we had found our way back, not to where we were, but to somewhere new, somewhere better maybe, somewhere more honest. The emerald ring sat in its box in my safe, waiting for the day when Alina Ruth would be old enough to understand what it represented. Not money or revenge or control, Just love passed down through generations, making its way forward through time. That was the real treasure. That was what lasted. And finally, after everything, I understood what Alina had been trying to tell me all along.